The Immortals of Meluha is the first book in an Indian-inspired fantasy trilogy that I have been recommended quite highly here on the channel, and I was excited to get to for many reasons. I've been wanting to read more foreign fantasy as a whole, and specifically Indian-based fantasy has kind of fascinated me, and you guys seem to be really excited for me to get more into it in my audience, so I will be doing this again in the future. Unfortunately, though, this did not seem to be the place for me to start. I had quite a few problems with this book, though before I get into those, I do want to start with my praise. On a plot and story level, I enjoyed this book. It has an extraordinary concept of trying to take this godly figure and personify them and show a journey where we can understand how they became what they are now known as in this religion. It's really, wow, I have not seen that before. And the story that then is told, I thought did a really good job of exploring that idea. And on another level, as an outsider looking in, it was fascinating to watch this culture, religion, and history explored in a fantastical sense. It simultaneously made me want to learn more about the real world side of things and just envelop and lose myself in this fantastical retelling. In fact, I ended up doing more research around the real life historical and cultural religion inspirations for this book because it did such a tantalizing job of telling this tale. Unfortunately, though, a lot of the issues I have undercut that experience, but let's talk about a couple more positives. This book also took some inspiration specifically from the Persian Empire, which, talk about an underrepresented, very important historic empire in fantasy. Like, people are constantly pulling from Rome, Greece, medieval times, but not the Persian Empire, and that's a big deal that's often forgotten about. Now, I will caveat all of this by saying before the research I did while reading this book, my understanding of these real-world religions, cultures, and history is basically boiled down to a couple college classes by Pips, which is a shame, and I wish I knew more going in, but it did just give me the excuse to read a lot more of the context around it, which was just so much fun. In several online reviews, I've seen this compared to Tolkien, which I just don't find to be accurate. I would say it's much more apt to compare this to Arthurian legends in concept and execution due to its pulling from real life historical stuff so heavily and without changing them, trying to actually ground them in 1900 BC is the time frame it takes place in. So I would say if you're looking for, a more Arthurian type fantasy tale, that's going to have much more of an appeal to you in that sense. And the final praise I have here is this book's discussion around morality specifically I enjoyed. It was a more in the black and white side of things discussion of good versus evil, but there was a level of nuance taken for that specific angle that I haven't really seen before, and it definitely fit with the story on the page here. Fortunately though, that's where my praises rather end. Those are high praises. Me liking the plot, story, and narrative, as well as a discussion around morality, is all a solid place to start. This book just kind of hits failure to launch for me, though, because of some severe technical problems. Biggest one, and most to the forefront, it's poorly written. I actually thought this could have been a translation issue, but after doing some research online, it seems to have actually originally been published in English. It even has Hindi written as one of the languages it's been translated into in its Wikipedia page. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an English book, and the language here was so dumbed down and simplistic, I could not immerse myself in the world that was being pasted here. Maybe that's why I found myself needing to go actually read about the real world inspiration so much, because I just wasn't drawn into this world with its lack of immersion in the writing, the technical side of it. On top of that, the editing absolutely needed another pass through because this book is repetitive. Whoever the editor was should have picked up on this and stopped it. It's so repetitive, I got to the point where I thought maybe the author was trying to pull off some deep convoluted literature move where we find out this repetition serves a purpose to tell us a lie that we need to pick up. No, it's just extremely redundant, which for me hurt it a lot. It came across like the author didn't have faith in his reader to remember any detail. Not necessarily a good feeling to have. Yo, I got some bread. Okay. Yeah, hold up. I got bread. Nice. Wait, real quick. No, real. I have bread. Yeah, I heard you. What? I have bread. I know. You told me. Did you know I have? Stop it. Hey, I get it. I got some crusty boys. Even if I'm mistaken, and this was originally written in Hindi and just information online is inaccurate, which happens all the time around publication, the criticism remains though for anyone who's going to be picking up the English version of the book. It grated on me like sandpaper. This absolutely needs a better writing style to do the better underlying narrative justice. My next huge criticism comes into the characterization. Now, there's a hefty task to be undertaken here, right? With this story, telling a godly level narrative, you have quite the heavy load when it comes to developing and executing this character. It was just completely lost for me because the author insisted on telling, not even telling, like yelling in the reader's face how amazing and good this person is instead of showing us. And there are a few times where we're shown their, greater actions, their higher morals, but then it can also be contradicted by other events within the story. That's not a good thing. If we're going to be constantly told this person is amazing, they need to live up to that. And if they don't, and have only been told it, it feels like this disjointed element to the narrative that just drove me nuts. This is amplified by the fact that almost every character in this book just remains flat for me. The lack of development or character exploration that is meaningful is crippling. The story deserved better characters, especially with the general concept behind it, and I was just not connecting with any of them, and I found the way they were told to just be, again, redundant, which now my review feels redundant, and just lacking any substantial depth. The disconnect between the concept behind the story and the execution of character development is jarring. This is a concept that demands high-level character work, and it just is not there. The most effective way, like the way everyone knows to build characters well for your audience, is subtly by showing who they are. This just goes the complete opposite direction here, where we are shown who they are, but it's like very over-the-top displays of morality. And even that is again undercut by this insistence on just telling us how good they are or how bad they are or whatever throughout the book. The Immortals of Meluha is a phenomenal example of how a book with a great concept, I mean, just the time this is set in, 1900 BC alone, is enough to perk my ears up and go, most fantasy isn't set that long ago, being absolutely destroyed by technical problems. It's really a failure to launch. We have this big, beautiful rocket on the launch pad that I'm excited to see soar to these heights, and it only gets like 300 feet in the air before exploding. It's just not delivering on what was promised. Now, if you're a reader though who's not bothered by these more technical issues I talked about, a weaker prose, some telling not showing, a severe insistence on repetition, you could absolutely still enjoy this just on the premise. It's executed well enough, and the ending could bother some, but overall is satisfactory in that nature. So if you are a plot reader, you'll probably have your rating substantially higher than mine. Fortunately though, for me, this is going to remain at a 3.5 out of 10. I absolutely see golden nuggets. They are just so far, few, and in between that I'm not going to really be recommending this to anybody. I won't be picking up the sequel, and I will be trying again with another story to enter this type of fantasy in the future. And I do specifically want to end this review by asking my audience members to please go ahead and recommend, if you're familiar with this type of fantasy, another place for me to try and get going with, my taste in mind, I guess, which is a high thing to ask for people who are just casually watching some guy's review online, but it remains. Anyway, guys, like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you'd like to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my recent high tier Patreons, Grey Hive and Jordan Bonnell. Thank you guys so much. Hope you're having a good one. Peace.